the most important. And so that's why I appreciate people like you sharing this type of information, because there's a lot of people out there who don't know,
Yeah.
what to do or what might work. And I put myself through everything. I tried virtually everything out there. It was a very long and expensive journey.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. That's what I've learned. It doesn't have to be that expensive. It doesn't have to be that hard, but it does take perseverance, dedication to walk the path, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that, well, before I get into that, let me at least, like, want to say what I'm grateful for, because I always forget what I'm, we get to talking and I'm like, oh, it's my turn. I think that, although I'm a summer girl, Christmas is my favorite time of year. As a Christian, I'm so grateful for Christ and all that He did for us, and this time of year just means a lot to me. I get to go see my family. We're going to go down and hang out with my brother and his new wife, and it's just such a really fun time of year. The Christmas trees, all of the things. So, some of the things about it can get a little over the top, but the foundation of Christmas is really what matters, and so I'm super, super grateful for that. Anyway, so yeah. So let's talk about, kind of dig into your story, and where you were starting is how expensive it can be. And I have a story, although not as hard as yours, right, as difficult as yours, but there's a story there, and I agree with you that it can be very, very expensive as you're trying to understand what's going on, try to figure it out. I mean, part of my story is why I'm here today as well, right? And I want to save people from having to continue to search, because that's what I do, is I help them search, and I help to find answers. And hopefully, we're not, spinning our wheels constantly, because that's what happens, right? You're spinning your wheels, you don't know why, and you just want to feel better. For the love of Pete.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's just jump into that. Let's talk about your story, all that you dealt with, and then how you got where you are now.
Well, it really started with just me starting to have symptoms, and obviously a lot of different symptoms that were causing this illness. And I was trying to be kind of probably stubborn about it, meaning that I was just ignoring it. I'm like, oh, I have a pain here, I'm going to ignore it. Oh, this is happening, I'm ignoring it. But then it got so bad to the point where I was in such a level of pain that I literally couldn't lift up. I remember trying to lift up a remote control to watch TV because I was basically on the couch. I couldn't walk. And I couldn't even do that. I couldn't use the remote control because my joints hurt so bad. And I couldn't walk. And
how old were you? Sorry, how old were you?
Back then, when all this started happening, my first issues started probably in my early to mid-20s.
Okay.
But I was able to, push on through and modify my life and modify those type of things. And probably by my early 30s is when things really started getting pretty bad.
Okay.
And then, like I said, not being able to walk is pretty heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking about not being able to get up, and it wasn't just an inability to walk. Like, if I could walk, it'd be like, okay, so I'd use a wheelchair, but it was because I was in so much pain. I couldn't even get in a wheelchair. I certainly couldn't roll myself around because of my joints hurting so bad. And then on top of it, like, a lot of gut issues, a lot of immune system issues, and like autoimmune, I had inflammation all over the place. My immune system was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I would get sick at the drop of a hat, and it would take me a month and a half to, overcome a common cold or the flu or something like that. And I remember getting sick within a week all over again, and it was just really frustrating. And on top of it all, I had a heart condition, which I was told was going to end my life in less than a decade. And I needed open heart surgery, and it was just kind of one thing after another. My liver wasn't at its best, neither were my kidneys, but I mean, they weren't, I wasn't about to go on dialysis or anything, but they were definitely not at their best. So it was like a lot of things that compiled together, and on top of it too, I forgot I had tumors also. I forgot to mention that I had these little tumors that were in my nerves, which also were causing a lot of the pain. So it was a really rough time, and it caused me to lose everything I had. I couldn't work, so I lost my home, and I lost all my savings, and so the whole process took years, and I had to do a lot of my own research because a lot of people don't know that I've worked in the medical establishment for like 2 decades or more. And so I knew I worked with a lot of doctors, a lot of specialists, and I knew the way the medical system worked because I worked in it. And so I wasn't being disillusioned. I knew what they could and couldn't do.
Yeah.
And once I got really bad, I became kind of scared because I thought, oh no, they're not going to have any answers. They're just going to want to put me on anti-inflammatories, and they're going to want to put me on pain pills, which of course they did try to do. And then they even try to shove other stuff down your throat, like antidepressants. And it's like, look,
bad.
It's not like I'm depressed. I'm not very happy because of my medical situation, not because pills are going to change anything. And so it was extremely frustrating to put the least, and I had to end up carving my own path and doing my own thing.
So I'm curious, I think partly because we as humans, we want to have a diagnosis, right? And what I know about my own, working with clients is, and I don't diagnose, right? I'm not a doctor, but we might not always find what would be a diagnosis, but we can find the underlying cause of what's happening with all the symptoms. So I'm curious if any of your practitioners, your doctors, whatever, tried to put a name or a diagnosis to what you were dealing with.
I will say also before I begin, I will say I'm not giving any medical advice or making any medical claims either, Carrie. I want to let people know that. But as far as me, there's a few things that they diagnosed, but they really didn't know what was causing all these issues. Mm-hmm. They knew about the tumors, so obviously, they biopsied them and whatnot.
They're benign.
They were actually, they're called a neurofibroma.
Okay.
So it's from a condition called neurofibromatosis. Okay. So that was one of the things.
Okay.
And I had multiple of those. And then on top of that, obviously, the heart condition was something that they also did diagnose. I went to a cardiologist, and they did a lot of studies, and they confirmed that I had a pretty nasty heart condition. And then the rest of the stuff, was more like, okay, we do see that you have inflammation. We do see that there's something maybe autoimmune, and that was about the extent of it.
Yeah, so didn't really know, couldn't figure out why all of this was happening.
Yeah, and arthritis, they did mention that too.
Yeah, lucky you. Can I ask you how old you are now?
Yeah, I'm in my late 40s now.
Okay, good for you.
Just not doing 50.
Man, I know, March I'm going to be 52. It's like, whoa, yeah. It's crazy, but we're here, right?
Yeah, I feel better now than I did when I was in my 30s.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so your research took you where?
So ultimately, I researched, there's a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different things that I changed in my life. I really followed the science and the data, and I did that because I got a little tired of, there's so many difference of opinions out there as far as health. One person will tell you to eat nothing but meat, another person will tell you to eat nothing but fruit, some other person will say something else, and everybody seems to have their own opinions when it comes to health. Even the type of water you drink, one person says, no, this water, this person says, no, the alkaline water, and so everybody's always changing their mind, and it was very, very frustrating, and I tried many different things, and I got tired of going in different directions, and so I started reading the science about things. I'm like, look, I'm just going to look at data, I'm going to follow the best science I could find, and that's how I ended up creating my own path. And although I changed a lot of things in my life, they weren't really fixing my issue. They were helping my health and whatnot, but it really wasn't resolving the issue. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until I discovered something called molecular hydrogen. I started reading the scientific data on hydrogen, and I first honestly thought it was a hoax. I thought, this can't be true. This stuff sounds way too good to be true. And we all know that when it's way too good to be true, it's typically not true.
Right.
And so I did not try it. I did not try it for years. I read about it. And the reason that I didn't really try it also was because I didn't understand hydrogen. I didn't understand how in the world I was going to get my hands on it, because you don't just go to the corner drugstore and say, hey, I need some molecular hydrogen. Mm-hmm. Not to be confused with other forms of hydrogen, by the way. This is not to be confused with hydrogen peroxide or what some people call Brown's gas or deuterium, there's different types of hydrogen, and we are specifically speaking of molecular hydrogen because that's what the data was all about. This is what the data was showing was not only amazing for the body and health, but it is something that actually eventually became medically approved. It wasn't just something that they did 10 studies or 20 studies or even 100 studies. At this point, there's over 2,000 studies. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so that's kind of how it began, and I became so desperate, because of what I was going through. And I felt like I didn't have much time, to be quite honest with you. And eventually I was like, okay, how do I do this hydrogen thing? So that actually became more difficult. It was more difficult to learn how to make it the proper way, because there's a lot of ways, in my opinion, that are terrible to make hydrogen in certain ways because of the byproducts. And then, of course, how to create protocols. And so I did a lot of work like that. And I was my own guinea pig. And the things that I ended up discovering about hydrogen and what it can do and what it did for me and what it's done for loved ones like my father and different friends and family and even people from YouTube, who contact me and whatnot. The results have been literally like a miracle. It's been hard to believe. But what I find interesting is I've always observed nature in order to find answers. And that's actually, hydrogen was an interesting one because there's a place in France called Lourdes, France. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it.
Yep. Just doing my research when, for this show. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And see, a lot of people don't know that there's this place called Lourdes, France, where they have the holy water, of Lourdes, or the healing waters of Lourdes. And of course, me being a skeptic, I'm a huge skeptic, and I just don't believe what I'm told every day anymore. There's so much nonsense out there.
Yeah, so much.
And so that water, I mean, they have a lot of documented cases of people literally getting better, a lot of people. And so this was well documented, and I became intrigued by this. And then, of course, the Japanese discovered that water was high in molecular hydrogen. It had levels of molecular hydrogen that were quite high in that water. And then, of course, they started doing studies, starting with mice in Japan, and that's really how this ball got rolling, and that's kind of how it all began.
Fascinating. So fascinating. I have so many questions. I think one of the things is one of the things you said was in making it. So there are ways of making it that can be problematic, right? You said with I don't remember how you said it, but ways that can be problematic and ways that are more healthful. What did you find, and what can be problematic about the ways that it can be made, and how can it be made?
So you can do things like chemical reactions, which I'm not super fond of, sure. Because of residues that I've seen. There are people who have used something called like sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide, and then they send an electrical current through water, because within water, hydrogen's in there, but it's bonded to oxygen, hence H2O. H2 is molecular hydrogen. And so you're trying to separate this bond to get access to the hydrogen. But while doing it, you have something extremely, toxic in my opinion, which is lye. I mean, lye is the main ingredient in Drano. This is not what you'd want in your water, or you wouldn't want to be inhaling that, in my opinion. Yeah. And so it took a long time to figure out how to do it. Eventually, I knew all the parameters and all the data to look for, because when you look at hydrogen equipment, there's a lot of numbers that nobody would really understand on the norm. And so eventually it led me to a Japanese company. There was a Japanese company, and the story they have, the gentleman who created the device, when I found it and I looked at all the data, I was like, oh my goodness, this is literally textbook for what you're looking for if you're wanting to make the best hydrogen in the world. As far as for your health and for the body, not for any other purpose. And that's how it kind of all began. And I reached out to a lot of hydrogen companies. I've used a lot of different devices. And throughout the years, I learned the better ways and the not so good ways of making it, due to, one, you'd be surprised that you'd have to learn a lot about metallurgy, the science of metals, which I didn't really want to learn about. This is not what I wanted to learn about. I mean, I just wanted my health back, but the things that I had to go through to learn everything about hydrogen and how to make it, from, also the way, I don't want to directly electrolyze water is what I learned. So how do I get the hydrogen without literally running electrical current through the water I'm going to be drinking? And on it went, special membranes, and the whole thing was quite complex. But I was so grateful for this Japanese company. They were so on the ball. I talked to so many people that clearly did not know what they were talking about. Still to this day, there's so much about hydrogen that people are so wrong. When I talk to different people at different companies, and they've been taught things incorrectly, they're not really following the science, the data. And with true, doctors, like in Japan, that actually use hydrogen. There's a really highly intelligent doctor by the name of Dr. Adachi, and he's like a neurosurgeon, I believe, but he's also like an assistant professor of neurosurgery, and he's highly credited. One of the universities he graduated from is like the #1 university in Japan, which is like a really big deal because the Japanese are incredibly smart.
Yeah.
And they value education a great deal. And this guy literally, I discovered, will only use the device that I actually am using myself. So I was like, oh, he picked the same one because it's the best and the safest, he said. And then, of course, it's the only device that he recommends for his patients. And that's because I think, Nikki, I think what's important to understand is the difference between what we would call like medical grade hydrogen versus non-medical grade. And for people who don't understand, oxygen is another good example. If you go to the hospital, there's literally medical grade oxygen that they use for patients when it's needed. And you can go to a welding shop and they have oxygen tanks too. That is not the same type of oxygen. And the difference is purity. That's literally what it comes down to, is purity. And that was one of the things that became a huge proponent in me trying to recover my health. Was everything. I went for the highest purity of everything. I make the purest water, so I know so I have to learn about every water filtration system or modality in existence. I literally have lab reports. In fact, I brought one here. I have lab reports in regards to what certain water filters can and cannot do, and what is ultimately the best way to clean our water, because I was using water as a carrier for the hydrogen.
Sure. Is this, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I can't help myself. So this report that you have, is this something that you can share? I would love to see it myself, and I don't know if anybody else would, but.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. It's a third-party lab test, and there's literally, this is shocking. It was shocking to me. I learned a whole lot about water. I really feel like I'm a water expert at this point. This is one page, and these are all chemicals, every single one of them that they found in water. And I mean, I'm not kidding, there's pages and pages of chemicals in our water. And it's unbelievably scary because if you're worried about your health, in my opinion, you need to clean your water. It's foundational to our health and what is entering our body and is affecting our kidneys, our liver, our immune system, the whole deal.
So what kind of water are you using?
I use something called carbon distilled water. And the reason that I do that is just because it's the cleanest. And also because, again, Mother Nature, that's literally how it cleans water also. So I'm always using science, but I also, if I can find more data from other places to find the answer that I'm ultimately looking for. But when you carbon distill water, it's the only way that will remove literally all viruses from water, all bacteria from water, all parasites from water, and then you start going down the list of like fluoride and obviously chlorine, chlorines, all the different things, pesticides, all the stuff in water. So that's the water that I use as a base. And then I start my process from there, from the remineralizing it to putting hydrogen in it, and literally creating what I think it's the best water in the world. I don't think that there's any better water in the world than this water at this time.
Do you have a distiller? Did you purchase a distiller? Yeah.
Absolutely. I did deep research into that too. And I learned how they're made in order to understand what the best is. And the best ones I found, it's from a website called mypurewater.com.
Yep.
And if people want discounts, there is a code, uprising144K is a code.
Great.
They don't have to use it, doesn't matter. But the important part is they're made in America. They use higher quality metals, like the metals that they use for their process. And the way that they make these special little carbon filters that go with the distiller, they're made a specific way where they don't use glue. They use really high-end stuff, and it's not expensive. That's the crazy part. Making the cleanest water in the world is actually not that expensive.
Awesome.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. There's so many different, going back to how confusing it is to to be healthy, to know what kind of water filter to use, and the water filters that we have in our refrigerators that we can do attached to the sink and all these things, and how they just don't work. They don't work well at all. And we're just constantly marketed to about these things and thinking that we're doing the right things, and we're still just taking in so much toxicity in all of the different forms, right? Metals, chemicals, microbes, all of these things. And it's only been, it's the same for me. I have, only within the last few years have I understood that distilled water, and a good quality, good quality distilled water, is hands down the best. And I have stories, and they're not mine or my clinics, my practice stories, but sort of indirect stories, I suppose, where people who are struggling so intensely, they do one simple thing and it's changed their water to a good distilled water, not even adding hydrogen, right? But taking out all of the toxins that are constantly putting a burden on the body. And you drink good, clean, healthy water, and you're truly and purely hydrated. It's a game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's extremely important. I was doing that. It didn't heal me, but I was doing the clean water, and obviously the hydrogen is the magic,
right? Sure.
But I do completely agree with you. I've had actually numerous physicians and naturopaths contact me because I've been doing this for so long, where I've literally trained them, or they contact me because they're sick and they can't figure out their issue. And for whatever reason, I got a knack for it now. I don't know what it is, but something happened. And I just have the ability, and it made me think of a lady who was a doctor, an MD. Your story was because I remember she wanted to do a consult with me, and I went through all the different things that we should change in her lifestyle, and there were a lot of things she didn't want to change. She was a big believer in what she was doing, but I remember one of the funny things was she got the hydrogen machine, and it's a hydrogen generator. And what was interesting about it is only about a month after using it, there's something appeared in the hydrogen machine. And she was really concerned. She called me or sent me an email, and I called her back. And it looked like green bubble gum inside the machine, and I'd never seen that before, ever. So, of course, I reached out to the company, and they go to the engineers, and they came back to me, and they said, you know what, that's not even the machine. It's actually the water she's using. And I was like, it was the water she's using? And I remember telling her, before she even started this process, I said, get a carbon distiller and clean your water first. And she's like, no, my filter is fine, which I'm not going to name her filter, but I will tell you that I've since discovered that a lot of these water filters, if you test the water before and after, it's really tricky because some of the water is actually coming out worse after going through the filter than the tap water that you're putting in there, which is unbelievable. And I'm learning that a lot of these filters are made in, let's just say, in certain places that I'm not super fond of, certain countries that are not known for purity. And there's even some lawsuits for some of these water filtration companies. And I'm very, very weary and very, very picky about the water filter I use. You mentioned the refrigerator water filters. Those build up bacteria. They make your water, I hate to say, worse than what was coming through in the first place. And so water filtration is a very big deal that people do not talk about enough. Right. But it turned out in the end that this doctor, she'd been sick for a long time, but it turned out that there was definitely something sinister in her water, and the hydrogen machine had exposed it, which was something I've learned about the generator that I use, is that it actually exposes things in your water. And so got her on a carbon distiller, got on hydrogen, solved her problem, and that was that. I never heard back from her anymore. When she was better, I just heard, she's like, I'm good now, and that was it. And she had that problem for a year. She couldn't figure out her stuff, but anyway. So it's been a very interesting road.
Yeah, no kidding. So another question I have is back to the hydrogen generator itself. Because what I know, so when I was first introduced to hydrogen, however many years ago, it was in pill form. And so you and I talked about this, but there's pill form, there's water, and then there's gas. So I'd like you to talk about those because you gave me some interesting information about the pill form. What's interesting too is last week, I think it was, my cousin came, he was, hanging out with us, and he's like, so I'm doing my hydrogen water every morning, and he pulled out this black pill, and he put it in his water. I'm like, okay. Because I stopped doing the little black pill. But I want you to talk about that, because of course I'm going to send this to him because I want him to have the information. But when we think, and I do a good bit of research, but I also am trusting of the companies I use that are professional lines. So it's one of those things that we can't be too trusting, and we have to be aware. But so anyway, I'm going to stop there and let you talk about the differences.
Well, there's a lot of issues with the pills, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I'm hesitant to say some of the stuff that I've actually seen in lab reports, because I'm not going to name the name of any products. I will say that. Right. And I'm not making any claims, but I will say that the hydrogen pills, they all make hydrogen the same way. So they're all functioning basically the same way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of issues with them. One is, well, you'll probably notice, since you've done it, you can answer the question for me. When you put the pill in the water and then you drink the water, does it taste like water anymore, or is there something other than water now that you're tasting?
Yeah, it tastes different. Mm-hmm.
And what did you taste? Or what did it taste like to you?
Well, I don't know, but I say this because you already put it in my head. So I mean, right? Okay. So lead is what you told me, that they're full of lead, right?
I saw lead on the lab report of these pills, mm-hmm. and that's because, and I'm not I don't want to get anybody in trouble. It's just that what happens is they're using what's called metallic magnesium. Metallic magnesium is a compound metal. And although the numbers, so maybe they take one pill, and they say, well, look, it has a safe amount of lead, right? It's lower than the safe number.
Right.
Now, you and I start talking about purity. Do I want any lead in my water at all? I don't even care how small it is. I don't want any of it, right? I could show you the lab report where, the lead that's in the water, the carbon distiller removes all of it. It doesn't leave a little bit to say, now it's within safe levels. Like, to me, this is a problem, but I know nobody wants to hear it, and that's fine. I don't want to go and, say that all the time. But the point is that when you taste the water, numerous people, it's not just me, numerous people, and I've tried them myself, the water tastes like metal. Mm-hmm. It tastes like this weird metal taste. And the water turns like gray, the color of metal. It literally turns the color of metal.
Yeah.
And so, and on top of it all, pure molecular hydrogen is supposed to be what we call pH neutral. I mean, this is really the correct way that it should be done if you talk to like a medical professional that's using it. When you drop a pill in there and you test the pH before and after, the water becomes quite acidic. It's actually extremely acidic after this pill. So we're not talking pure hydrogen. I'm shocked how many people, quote unquote, recommend these, but whatever, that's a whole other thing. Because like you said, I'm not really trusting of what I hear anyway. I want the best. And when it comes to molecular hydrogen, it appears that the best, if you make it properly and correctly, the pH should literally stay pretty neutral. And so that's one of the important things. And remember, hydrogen's colorless. It's odorless. It's tasteless. So why in the world does it turn gray? Why in the world would it taste like metal? And there is even a smell to it too. So to me, that's not pure. And that's the reason that I just wasn't a very big fan. Plus, it ends up being, the other problem with it is the amount of hydrogen that you're getting. It's very, in my personal opinion, it's kind of a sleight of hand. Because if you take a very small amount of water and you say, well, it's got a huge amount of hydrogen, in this tiny little bit of water, hydrogen escapes very quickly out of the water, especially once it goes past what we call full saturation. Now, I don't want to get too complicated with people, but to give a real simple depiction, full saturation is about 1.6 parts per million, ppm. And so anything beyond that, basically the hydrogen begins to escape very rapidly out of that water, unless it's under pressure, which it can't really be under pressure because you're going to be, you got to crack it open and ingest it. And so the amount of water also is difficult, because the 1 liter, as compared to comparing like maybe 6 ounces or something, checking the amount of hydrogen is tricky, because you can come up with a lower number for the 1 liter. You could say there's 1.6, and you could say, oh, this little tiny thing of water has 6 ppm, or whatever number somebody would give. the larger container might actually have more hydrogen because it's based on the amount of water. And that really comes down to how many milligrams of hydrogen. So it all gets, dare I say, it gets a little complicated,
Sure.
but there's a very simple way to do this. Everything I do, I try to simplify. I don't want to sound smart. I don't want to sound like some scientist or doctor, confuse people, and just toot my own horn all the time. That's not really what I want to do. I just want people to know how easy it can be and what they can do. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they get the results that they're looking for, so that if they are suffering or they have family who is suffering, they can overcome that.
Yeah. So I want to make two comments, or maybe one comment, and then one's kind of a comment question. The first comment goes back to what you were saying about, you know, these small amounts and these amounts of chemicals or metals or whatever the case may be that is within safe range. It's the most frustrating thing for me, and I have to point this out because we just don't really think about it. For one, we're putting our trust in a government body who says things are safe, and I don't really trust that at all. Two, though, is that if we have to drink water to live, we have to eat food to live, and we're doing this, in most cases, multiple times a day. Hopefully, we're doing it multiple times a day. If we are consuming foods that are full of pesticides, herbicides, even if they're within safe levels, if we're consuming water that has metals that are within safe levels, all of those things, doing this daily all the time, yes, yeah, your bucket, it compounds, and your bucket's going to end up overflowing, which is, you know, when I say that, that's what happened with you, right? You had symptoms. Finally, you overflowed and you couldn't move, right? I mean, it's. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Nikki, and I completely agree with you. It does compound, and that's why, you know, I'm like, I want the cleanest water. I'm trying to get the cleanest food. I'm trying to get the cleanest hydrogen. Like, I'm trying to do the cleanest of everything. And I'm not fooling myself thinking that I'm still not coming in contact with impurities.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm still coming in contact with them, but I'm definitely significantly lowering my load, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And then hydrogen, you know, because of how protective it is. I don't know if you've ever looked into that, but it has absolutely blown my mind how much it protects the body. And that's why I'm a big proponent of using it all the time for myself, you know.
Yeah. Well, and let's get into that, because here's so I recently within the last couple of years, you hear of the hydrogen water. They're selling machines that create hydrogen water, which I think is fine, right? From what I know, right? You're going to know more about that than I am. What they're also pushing, though, not they, what I think can be a problem is what you said was it should be pH neutral. When a lot of these, some of these companies who I've come in contact with are pushing that it is alkaline, right? It's hydrogen water, it's also alkaline water. I have a real problem with this notion of pushing these intensely alkaline products on our bodies when that's not how it's meant. That's not how our bodies work. You know, we don't take in alkaline water and then all of a sudden become totally alkaline, right? Our blood pH has to stay at a very specific pH or we die. I mean, and there's not much room there. You constantly take in alkaline water. I'd love to know your opinion on this. My understanding, you constantly take in alkaline water. We have a stomach that has a very, very acidic pH. We start to neutralize the pH of our stomach. We don't break down food. We don't kill microbes. We start to not digest our foods. All of these things happen if we're constantly taking in this alkaline water. You know. Anyway, so I'd love your opinion on that.
Yeah, you're definitely making good points, and that's exactly what I discovered on my own too, because you've heard of machines like the Kangen machines or these water ionizers. And originally they were telling everybody, oh, the reason that it's so great for your health is because it's making alkaline water. That was originally what they were telling people. Of course, as time went by, the Japanese discovered that actually wasn't the case. It was actually the hydrogen that was doing this, and those machines were inadvertently making some hydrogen.
Okay.
Was it doing it the right way or the best way? In my opinion, definitely not. Even the Japanese eventually realized it wasn't the best, because they realized that after long term of using this, it was causing GI issues, just like you were saying, it was messing with stomach acids. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's important to clarify, to, instead of just saying alkaline water, because that's actually too vague, we can make water alkaline with baking soda.
Sure.
We can make water a little more alkaline with certain minerals. And you can do it through this ionization process that these machines do. They're not all the same. And so we just say alkaline water, but they're actually a little different. If I drink water with a little bit of minerals and it happens to be a little alkaline, that's actually fine.
Sure.
But through ionization, the way that these machines do it, in my opinion, is definitely not the correct way. And because the Japanese discovered that, obviously the technology moves forward. And like I was saying again, the hydrogen generator that I use does not make the water alkaline. That's not what it does. It's specifically designed to just put pure hydrogen, which is, again, leaving the pH quite neutral. So when you do artificially alkalinize the water, and as you were saying, it disrupts stomach acids, which is not only responsible, like you said, for killing certain, whether it's bacteria or some type of pathogen that we don't want to enter our GI system. That's important.
Yeah.
And yes, breaking down the food, but the last thing that you probably forgot to mention was your ability to absorb nutrients. You have to break it down with the acids, and if we're not absorbing our nutrients properly, well, we go back to the science and the data. If you don't have certain nutrients, like for example, I can use the vitamin C. If we're deficient in vitamin C, that actually causes scurvy. And if you fix the vitamin C deficiency, scurvy goes away. So part of my protocols and what I did for myself is understanding how to get all the nutrients in the body. I literally received, it's kind of hilarious to me, I used to do all this blood work quite regularly to make sure that what I was doing is working.
Yeah.
That's what I really wanted to know, because I'm really doing things that other people wouldn't do. I carved my own path is what I've really done. And I literally had a doctor, and this was not that long ago, a doctor called me because she saw my blood work. And when you work in the medical system, you know that getting a call from your doctor is typically not a good thing. When they ignore you, everything's fine. They only call you when there's a problem. Yeah. Most of the time. And so when she called me, I got really scared. I was like, oh my gosh, why are you calling? But she apparently was calling because she said, I've been doing this for decades. And she said, I've never seen blood work like yours. She said, never. It is so unbelievable. She said, I actually want to know what it is you're doing. That's why she called me.
I love that.
And of course, when I started telling her about my routine, she's like, oh my gosh, okay. She couldn't apply everything that I do for her patients because she just wanted a pill. And everybody just wants a pill. And I understand that, but there's a little bit more to it than that. I'm talking about cleaning my water and eating my healthy diet and this crazy hydrogen stuff I put in my water. She's like, what? Doctors don't know about molecular hydrogen, at least in America.
Right.
For the most part. In Japan, they definitely know about it, so it's a whole different volume over there than it is here.
So we're talking a lot about water, but when you and I first talked, you were actually using the gas. You had it where you were inhaling it, right? So
yes.
Talk about that. Talk about water versus gas. I'm assuming, because of what you're saying, you're doing both. Is it important to do both? Can you do one over the other? Tell me about that.
So I literally created a protocol, and this was just because of time and learning. Drinking the hydrogen water has certain positive effects on our body. It's been shown to be an anti-inflammatory. It does appear to be anti-aging. It also appears to be a selective antioxidant. And so much more. The list is they don't even know everything it does, actually, at this point. Science doesn't know exactly everything that hydrogen does, but they see that it has these very positive effects on, like, markers. Like if somebody has arthritis or high blood pressure, they see that hydrogen is affecting in a positive way. And so there's that, where you have the water carrying the gas. Well, originally scientists thought, well, if we just inhale the gas, so think about hydrogen like oxygen. Oxygen's a gas. We're breathing in right now. We're breathing in roughly 20-something% oxygen in our atmospheric pressure. And so hydrogen is also a gas. So they thought, well, inhaling the gas would be even better, right? You're going to get way more in your body. Originally, they discovered when they did that it really wasn't that true. That it turned out the water was working better, even though it had way less hydrogen, which was very odd. It completely flipped everything on its head. But what I eventually did is I started using both. And I did it in a specific way, and I won't go into the data as to why I did it. I find data that causes me to connect the dots and do these things on my own, but to keep it really simple, drink the hydrogen water first. You get the body hydrated, because, by the way, hydrogen hydrates. A lot of people don't realize that oxygen actually dehydrates. That's why when people are inhaling oxygen for long periods of time, if they're sick and they need, oxygen, they get really dried out. And like I said, oxygen dehydrates, hydrogen hydrates. So I do that first, then I would inhale the hydrogen gas. And that was the method that I was using, and it was working extremely well. I believe about 2 to 3 months after I released this on my YouTube channel, mysteriously somebody started doing these scientific studies on the same method. And, I think they probably took it from my channel, but that's fine. It didn't bother me. More than anything, they just proved my point. They proved that it worked better when you did both.
Okay.
Because each one seems to have their own benefit, but when you brought them together, they started doing things that neither one of them did individually on their own.
Okay.
And so that was a technique that I use. I also use hydrogen when I'm eating. So I make these pretty powerful smoothies in the morning, and when I'm drinking my smoothie, I'll inhale the hydrogen or inhale it during meals, because there's some very interesting science and data in regards to literally every meal we eat is aging us. I don't know if you've ever seen that data.
No, I haven't.
But we age with every single meal. And so I kind of get a weird, it's hard for me to describe, but I have a vision. I can see certain things about how the body works. And so that's how I also create these protocols. And I personally believe, there's no data at this time to support this, is that while you're inhaling the hydrogen gas, while you're eating meals, I think helps mitigate some of the negative effects that are happening in the body while we're eating.
So, little devil's advocate, because I see what you're saying, but we're aging no matter what, right? Every day, every second,
Yes.
we're aging. So are you saying like there are the chemicals in meals? I mean, we have to age. So what do you mean by that?
Okay, so let me put it this way. Let's say that with every meal, or even without eating, but when you fast, there's a lot of benefits too, because you're not eating. I mean, the whole point about fasting is actually to give your organs a rest.
Right.
Now my liver doesn't have to work so much. Now my kidneys don't have to work. And because you take this load off your body, now it can repair, and it can do a lot of other things.
Agreed.
And so if every day we're aging and taking 3 steps towards older age, maybe hydrogen, maybe you take 1 step back, but you still took 2 steps forward. So you're still aging. And the reason, and I won't go into the details, but I will tell you this, and it's going to sound really wacky, but I believe that I've discovered how we can actually reverse aging, because I believe that I've discovered actually what's really causing it, the real true cause of aging, not all the other domino effect that we see, and how we can litigate that. In fact, I already have a vision for roughly a, $30 million device that I personally believe will actually not only reverse aging from literally like an 80-year-old to 20 years old again, but also probably get rid of almost every medical condition known to man. And I actually wasn't going to share this information, but you just brought up some of it. But I won't go into details why. I already shared the information with a lawyer and a UCLA professor who's also a doctor. And they said that my hypothesis actually makes a lot of sense. And so now they never wanted me to say anything unless people sign NDAs or whatever. So that's a whole other thing at this point. But someday I think that'll become a reality, by the way.
That's awesome. Well, and so, the hard part about that is anytime something like that is developed, not that anything like yours has been developed, but you're going to get so much pushback because, if we get rid of disease, then what happens to hospitals and insurance, and so that's a tough one. I think it's amazing.
I definitely know about, that's why I don't talk about it, because I've actually thought that maybe it's not a good idea.
Probably not.
The same thing. So that's why I'm not giving any details. Hopefully everybody just thinks I'm a crazy man. And but I do hope to share someday, hopefully, with some, maybe even people like Elon Musk, some guy who's an engineer, has access to a lot of engineers, the proper funding, because I do personally believe that, hydrogen, I believe, will change the world. It's just that there's so many things that we can do with hydrogen that people haven't thought of. Yes, is it amazing for health? In my opinion, absolutely. But that's not the only thing we can do with it. There's other devices that I would like to create. I believe that we can utilize it to grow food that the world's never seen. I mean, I'm talking food that would be so crazy healthy for you. Like 1 carrot versus having to eat 1,000 carrots. Like when people are juicing and all this stuff. Taking food to a level that we haven't seen, thousands and thousands of years. But I do believe it used to be on planet Earth maybe that's why they wrote about the Garden of Eden. They could eat of any tree and they lived forever. Maybe they had the most craziest of superfoods.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things we can do with hydrogen, including clean energy is going to be another big part of hydrogen. Okay. Obviously, the way it affects our health. Even athletics, by the way. I've been doing some interesting stuff, playing around with hydrogen. There's so many things. The list is extremely long. It's almost full the list.
It's so fun. I love it. It's really exciting. I'm curious, going back to anti-aging, are there studies on hydrogen on our telomeres?
Not necessarily on telomeres as far as I remember. The anti-aging study, the very first one that I saw, was actually done in Japan. Mm-hmm. And it was a gentleman. So what they do in Japan, and I didn't learn all the details about this, all I know is that they could take your blood, and they can literally tell you roughly what age you are by looking at your blood, mm-hmm. and even just the age of your blood. And so they took this gentleman, and what they did was they checked his blood first, and then they said, we want you to use a certain amount of milligrams of hydrogen water, and the hydrogen water they were using was properly made. It was clean, it was pH neutral, there was no weird colors, odors, tastes. It was done correctly. Mm-hmm. And they had him drink so much of it every single day for literally a whole year. But he didn't change anything else in his life. They said, we want you to live normal, eat normal, everything stays the same. Mm-hmm. They only changed that hydrogen water. And after 1 year, when they tested his blood again, his blood was 5 years younger.
Wow.
And so that was one of the bigger things that I've read about and seen that had some actual good data behind it.
Okay, interesting. I just got a comment. There's data on telomere shortening of cancer cells. Interesting. Oh, so that's Sylvia. So Sylvia is a friend of mine who has been really into the hydrogen water. So that was her.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I think they did. I'd have to look deeper into that data because I do remember seeing something. I've seen stuff about T cells. I did a video recently about that, stem cells, mm-hmm. and telomeres. Mm-hmm. But the telomere one is one that I believe they're hypothesizing based on the way that hydrogen works that it should have a positive effect on telomeres. One of these types of things.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they've done specific studies on it.
Yeah. And I guess anybody who maybe has not heard of telomeres. Telomeres are interesting little tails, whiskers, whatever they are, on our DNA. I think that I'm getting this right, but it's on our DNA. And so ideally, or what it shows is, according to our telomeres, is the length of them gives us, we should have about 120 years to live. So, but because of, as we age, right, they shorten and shorten, which is going to be a normal, natural thing. But because of toxicities, because of disease, because of stress, because of life, because of all of these things, they're going to shorten quicker or shorten more and more and more. But they're also, so we can measure this, we can test telomere length, but then that also gives us the ability to look at, okay, what is it that we can do to actually extend our telomere length? And so my guess certainly would be that hydrogen would extend length, and then, getting all the crap out of our diet, right? So all of these basic things. But so that was why I asked the question for anybody who's not heard telomeres before. It's really fascinating to kind of dig into some of that stuff. It's really fun. Yep.
Yeah, we definitely, just like you said before, though, we definitely are aging. Mm-hmm. And that's just something that's going to happen until some of this new information hopefully comes out in the future. Mm-hmm. But that is something that no matter what you do, but I'm sure that you and your viewers understand, we want quality of life while we're alive,
It's not about... Sorry, go ahead.
And there were studies done on, and they were doing it on mice, in regards to how hydrogen affected longevity. So there was a lot of that. Okay. But probably one of the bigger things that they noticed was, yes, that it improved longevity, but it was more that the mice were actually healthier, the ones with the hydrogen. I wish I could show you footage. There was one that I really liked. They had a giant box, and they had a wall, and they had a big group of mice, and on the other side there was another group of mice, and one group got hydrogen, and one didn't, but they actually bombarded all of them with chemotherapy, like radiation.
Oh, jeez.
And you could literally see that this is what I meant about how protective hydrogen is. Imagine if it protects against things like radiation and chemo, just imagine what it, I could give you other examples like cisplatin, we'll talk about that if you want in a second, but the mice that had gotten the hydrogen were very active, they were moving around, they were having their little bowel movements, and pooping all over their little box and everything. And then the other side, they weren't even moving. They were all huddled together, and they weren't really having good bowel movements, and they looked to be cold. And so hydrogen had protected the ones that were still active and whatnot. And I have footage of cells with and without hydrogen being bombarded by chemo also on my video number 8. And again, it really shows you how protective hydrogen is. And I personally think that we need protection these days so much because there's stuff in our air, food, water, probably even our clothes.
Without a doubt.
The exposure, just sitting in front of computers all the time. It goes on and on. The list is extremely long. So I feel like we need all the protection we can get these days if we want to stay healthy.
Agreed. And hopefully one, can beget the other. But I totally agree with you because, we all have an end, but we want to ensure the best that we can that while we're here, because it can be, a truck in the street, right? There are a million things that can happen to us. And we don't know what that end is going to be. But I want to make sure that I am walking, talking, living, traveling, experiencing all of the things when I'm, 80, maybe I'm 100, and I'm able to function and do what it is that I need to do without the help of, all of, we have our 60 and 70-year-olds, and we're, I'm over 50, you're pushing, that are already not able to move, not able to live life, and that's not quality of life. That's not a way to live. And so my push, my sort of my guiding force when it comes to my world, the nutrition world, you're right there too, and then lifestyle is just to be the best that I can for as long as I have, and to feel good, and to give, and to share, and to love, right? All of these things these gifts that God gave us. And so this,
absolutely.
I think what you're doing is so freaking exciting. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to learn more. So I hope that we stay in touch. What I want, a couple of things. If there's anything that you have not shared yet, I want you to share it. But I also want to, are you doing consulting for this? Is this sort of part of who you are and what you do at this point? Is your consulting?
Well, this is terrible to say. So I don't really like doing a lot of consulting, mostly because the people that I tend to speak with, I've noticed, I don't feel like they're all in.
Sure.
I've talked to a lot of people who are not as dedicated as I am, and that's okay, but I just don't like using up my time, which I consider to be very valuable, to give my time to other people only for them to basically never follow through, or just, it ends up being a waste of time, let's put it that way. But do I do consulting? Yes. My heart goes out to people who are having issues, and I just, it's not what I want to do, but I do it because I care about people too much. And you even talked about, your beliefs, and ancient scripture basically says one of the most important things is for us to love one another. That's literally what it says, love your neighbor as yourself. And because I have this knowledge, it's really difficult for me to just say, hey, I have this knowledge and I'm going to use it for myself and that's it.
Right.
And I just don't feel like that's fair because I went through hell, and I've prayed about it. I went through hell, and I wanted to try to find light at the end of this tunnel, or something at least good that comes out of what I went through. And that one good thing is my protocols, what I've discovered, this water, how to clean it, the hydrogen. This is a really good example, Nikki. It's one thing that I really don't like to use, but I feel it's important, is I've known people, even people within my own family, who didn't want to change their lifestyle. They didn't want to change the way they eat. They don't want to change, if they like to go and have wine or a beer at a pub or whatever. They don't want to change their life. They want to just live the way that they want to live, but they want to have health. And they had issues, people I've known had issues with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, arthritis, glaucoma, diabetes. These are some of the issues that I saw from certain people that I personally knew. And they used the hydrogen water and the clean water. That's what they did, clean water with the hydrogen in it. And that was the only change that they've made in their whole process. I didn't first think it was going to work. I thought, with the way they were living, hydrogen's great, but is it going to just kind of trump everything else? And in the end, that's what happened. The blood pressure came down to normal. The cholesterol levels were again normal. The arthritis went away. Even the glaucoma, which is a amazing story, because the eye doctor, this was actually from my father, their eye doctor, his eye doctor, was completely confused because my father had that problem for over 3 decades.
Wow.
And your glaucoma doesn't just disappear when you're almost 80. You know, it didn't make any sense. So he was tested over and over, but this showed me the power of hydrogen. It showed me that I don't want people to expect that they can just eat cheeseburgers and fries and drink beer and have hydrogen, that their life's going to be perfect. But I have seen it be so powerful to the point where it kind of did do that, though I think that you could get better results, which is what I do. I do the diet, I do other, you know, I do my exercise, I do different things that just enhance it even more. And so I do believe in that, but I do think that just clean water and hydrogen can just change your life, because there's some people out there who just say, hey, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, I want to have donuts, I want to have I want to go to McDonald's, I just have to, I'm addicted or whatever.
Yeah.
But they still want to try to improve their health. Mm-hmm. And hydrogen still seems to be able to do it, even in the midst of all that. But when you're really serious, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you're real serious with something like cancer, I think you have to make a lot more changes personally.
Yes. Agreed.
You know, no medical advice again, and again, no claims, but I just want people to understand that just one glass of hydrogen is not going to just change your whole life. It's something that you use daily, just like we eat daily, just like we drink water daily. Hydrogen is part of my daily routine now. I drink it every morning. I could just drink it before we got on the air.
Yeah, awesome. We are about out of time. I want to, like I said, anything else that if you want people to contact you or to follow you, that kind of thing. I know that you also have a special that you are that you have for the machine that you. It's not your machine, right? But it's just the one that you believe in the most. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's definitely not my machine. Some people thought I even invented it. I did. I definitely can't take credit from the guy who did do this. The guy who invented it is a Japanese guy who originally invented it for his daughter. His daughter had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And they were saying that she'd be lucky to make it to the age of 5. It's a very sad story. He knew about hydrogen. He set out to develop the best machine. By the way, she's still alive now. She's like 12 or 13 years old now.
Amazing.
And hydrogen has been unbelievable for her. So that was pretty wild. But no, it's not. It's unfortunately not mine. I wish I could say it was, but it's not.
Cool. So, but we will have a code. I think I know that you have a code. We have a code. So is it Holy Hydrogen? Is that the website to get this?
Yes, the official website, and I always recommend you want to get the official one because this is the #1 machine in Asia. People have tried to copy it, so you want to go to like a legitimate site. Be very cautious. I've seen this happen before. Yeah. But the official site is holyhydrogen.com, and that's where they see the actual equipment. I don't know. You can give your code. I can give mine. Either way, it doesn't bother me. Whatever you prefer is fine.
Yeah. Well, it was I believe your assistant who we put together just TLN, as in Taste Life Nutrition, TLN Radio. Put that code in for $100 off. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware of it. I don't have an assistant, to be honest. You're probably talking about the guy from the company.
Maybe so.
Yeah, because they asked me if I'm willing to do interviews like this, and I am, because this allows people to learn about it. And also, like you said, if they want to learn more about it, I have a channel on YouTube. It's called Uprising 144K, and everything I put there is free. I never charge for anything. Everything's free. All the information is free. Subscribe. You know, it helps support this whole movement, and it's again free. Share with people that you know, because a lot of people are suffering from numerous medical issues that, in my opinion, they don't have to suffer from. So share this information with them. And always give it a thumbs up because, you know, it's positive and it's good support.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. I think I have one last question, and we're over a little bit, but, you know, we can do what we want. I'm curious, when you started using the hydrogen water and all of you know, developing your protocols, but you were so sick for so long, how long did it take you to start noticing change?
Typically, so for the average person, it depends on how long you've had the condition, for the most part, and usually a really solid number is 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
for me, there's some things I noticed within the first 3 to 4 months, and then there's things that I literally didn't notice until, I've been using hydrogen for years, and I think it was around the 3-year mark or 4-year mark. Man, some other things, because remember this, Nikki, you probably know this. The human body is always regenerating.
Right.
So the skin that we have right now is not the same skin we'll have in 3 to 6 weeks. And every single organ is regenerating and literally dying and regenerating at different rates. And so for the whole body, it literally takes about roughly 7 years. And so I really noticed, I've been on hydrogen now for like the really, really, really good stuff. It's been about, 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I did do hydrogen before that, but it wasn't the best, in my opinion, because the technology, even the technology that I'm using now, didn't come out till 2018.
Okay.
So, and that's the one that made my heart condition go away, because the other hydrogen equipment wouldn't. I realized that there's a difference in quality of hydrogen and how we use it. And so when I got the real good machine, that's when I really noticed some huge changes. And as I've been nudging to that 7-year mark, it's been unbelievable. There's things that are not backed by science that I'm hesitant to say, but I can just tell you that the way that it's affected my mind, the way that I think now, the way that I connect dots now, it's literally affected me in this like emotional, mental, and physical way. It's truly been unbelievable. I literally think that hydrogen is darn right spiritual. The holy side of Lords, the holy water. This website's called Holy Hydrogen. I just thought that was so amazing.
Yeah.
That it happened to have the best. And I just think that it's very spiritual. And remember this, because you're Christian, you're saying, I believe, hydrogen is actually the ascension molecule. That's what I call it. I call it the ascension molecule because it literally ascends. That's what it does. It ascends all the way back to the heavens, by the way. When I say heavens, I mean outer space, whatever. Which, by the way, outer space is made up of almost 80% hydrogen. So, like, the whole thing is made up of so much hydrogen. Our stars are made up of almost entirely hydrogen. They light up our world. We see the stars. Didn't they follow a star to find Jesus, when he was a little baby? Hydrogen is in our history.
Yeah.
Hydrogen has been a part of life. When the Bible says that, let there be light in this, or the Big Bang, because scientists believe in the Big Bang, that started with hydrogen, the beginning, and eventually the end, And so it is a huge, extremely powerful, in my opinion, healing and deeply spiritual molecule that I believe has now affected my mind. The devices that I want to create for longevity, for health, and for growing food that we've never seen, all those I believe have come from hydrogen. Those are not, I feel like I can't take credit for them. I feel like it almost speaks to you. I don't know at the time, but have you ever seen this book before? Of course, by another Japanese gentleman. You ever heard him?
Yes.
Messages of Water.
Yes.
Morimoto.
Yep.
And so he discovers, right, that water has memory.
Yeah.
And that water is so interesting. Well, I actually take it a step further. I don't think it's just the water. I actually believe it's the hydrogen within the water, the H2 aspect, because it has so much memory in it since the beginning, since the beginning. So it's a very spiritual molecule. I'll just leave it at that.
I love it.
I know we're out of time, so maybe sometime we can talk more deeply about it.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I would love to have you back on. I think I knew it was going to be fascinating, but it's just, I just love it. So thank you. Thank you for your story, and thank you for all you're doing. Really grateful that you're putting all of the information out there. I hope that I know you're reaching a lot of people, but I hope that you continue to just reach more and more, and that you build those machines and change the world, because that would be amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can't wait I'm willing to be the very first guinea pig.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. Share this show. Seriously, share. This is the Taste Life Nutrition podcast. After this, you can find it on YouTube, all the places. These are the things that need to be shared with your friends, your family, with the world, because there are a lot of amazing things out there that can help people. And this is a big one. So you can find me, tastelifenutrition.com, all of the social media, Taste Life Nutrition, and then, of course, Soulful Conception. I can't not talk about that. We have the ability as parents, those who are creating little munchkins, to change the world if we take care of ourselves today. We can affect hundreds of years ahead of us if we just take care of ourselves today, and that includes hydrogen. So anyway.
That was interesting that you brought it up there, because of a woman who had 2 kids. It was a testimonial. And the last one, she decided to do with hydrogen. And so during her pregnancy, she was using the hydrogen when the baby was born, and her testimony was unbelievable. Her baby, even the doctors commented how amazing the baby's health was, and way happier than even her other babies. And and her milk has been coming through much more powerfully. Yeah. She avoided all these medicines that they always put her with all her other pregnancies. It was unbelievable. So I would love to see super babies out there.
Yes.
Love to see that.
That would be amazing. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you back here next week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. See you later. KUHSdenver.com. Bye. All right. Give me 1 second.